Inside the Birds is back. What's going on, everybody? Geoff Mosher, Adam Caplan for an Inside the Birds, and welcome everybody to week one of the NFL season. It is here. The Eagles have a game Friday night, Adam. We now turn the page from training camp, preseason, 53-man. We'll get into a little bit of the roster moves here. And
a lot of them.
a lot of them, and the practice squad being finished out. But we're going to start to take a look now at the matchup that the Eagles have in Brazil. Not a very popular place right now for the teams who are participating, the Eagles and Packers, as they basically were given a list of things not to do when they get to Sao Paulo. And as A.J. Brown said, when asked what was on the list, everything. So they're basically going to be living in a bubble for a couple of days before they play a football game.
Yeah, they get there. They're leaving Wednesday morning, so they'll be there in the afternoon. It's a long flight, actually, probably maybe early evening, but nevertheless, yeah, they'll practice. See, here's a question. I know they have to practice there. Will actually be a walkthrough on Thursday. Will they practice Wednesday morning before they fly? Who knows? But yeah, and then they have this weird time. It's not 8:05, it's 8:15 Eastern Friday night they play. I don't know why they're doing that, but anyway.
Yeah, you remember when baseball games just started at like 7:07?
7:07, yeah. Or on the Superstation, 8:05.
That's right. No, it is very strange that they do that. But a lot to talk about here. At some point in the show, we're going to discuss our Inside the Birds seasonal content. We have added some things. We are happy to announce the return of some shows that we introduced last year. And we have even more content coming this season for the main platform, the YouTube channel, the podcast platform, than even last year. So we'll get really excited to talk about that. And, away we go. The season is here. And, hey, we're excited. We're ready to get to work. Let's talk about the transactions first, Adam. And I wanted to go with the James Bradbury thing. He obviously is suffered an injury. He's on IR now, and it looks to be, 6 to 8 week injury. There are some conspiracy theorists here who thought that the Eagles were just using that to be able to sign somebody to the 53-man roster, which wound up being Oren Burks that they signed to replace him from the practice squad. But this in no way is a good thing for the Eagles. In fact, I remember you and I were talking for the 53-man roster projection and said their goal was to just make sure he got through camp and preseason healthy so that if they couldn't trade him by the cut down, he could still have a chance to do that. But now it's hard to trade an injured player. It's impossible almost to trade.
Yeah, there's no one trading for him. There's zero chance he's traded this year. The question is, when he returns, what do they do with him? There's no reason to reach an injury settlement, as people are saying, because they owe him the money. You reach an injury settlement with a player when you go, okay, here's what we'll do. We're willing to cut you, but we're not going to pay your full salary. Like that's
right.
If there's no reason to. All the money this year for him is fully guaranteed, over $9 million. So why would you do that? Doesn't make any sense. Now, but you could do him a solid. You could just, once he's healthy, you could just say, "Hey, listen, we'll give you a chance to restart your career. We're going to let you go and let you sign and finish your career somewhere else."
Mm-hmm.
Which, quite frankly, when you look at it, and we'll get to some of the transactions, which are pretty interesting at the safety position. One in particular, I'm really interested in, but they have enough safeties now. They just got to stay healthy with Gardner-Johnson, Blankenship, McCollum, and now Maddox is a full-time safety. So you just don't need another safety. They don't need any corners, that's for sure. So he's a guy without an island, so to speak. There's no room for him.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think you're right. After the 8 weeks are up, who knows? There might be a team that's really hurting at corner, has a lot of injuries, and would be willing to sign James Bradbury as a free agent if the Eagles release him. But they're not going to trade for him at this point. Yeah, and that ship sailed, and we'll see what happens when he's healthy. But yeah, it's unfortunate for the Eagles. Obviously, year 2 of a huge contract that they gave him, and it just did not work out.
Yeah, and then the interesting part about this, and I know we're looking into this, we still don't have a clear answer. We have some idea, but with Burks brought up, like they could have just easily elevated him, take 1 to 3 elevations. They didn't do that. They actually signed him off of the practice squad. He's what was one of their veterans on the practice, one of their 6 that they're allowed. And by the way, a veteran doesn't have to be 4 years. It has to be more than 2 years. That's kind of the weird designation of this thing. So nevertheless, Burks is now on their 53-man roster. They have 6 ILBs when they only play 2. You could use 4. You definitely need 4, but you don't need 6 on your 53-man roster. which would tell me that maybe that the Eagles got wind that there was another team involved that had interest in him, so they wanted to add him and not lose him because he's got value. He's the one guy. If you look at it, Trotter's a rookie. Bond's playing this position for the first time. Dean has missed a lot of time, and Van Summer is really raw at this position. He's like the one guy who has shown that he can play consistent football. He did a good job for the 49ers role as their top backup linebacker, and he started some too in his career, whether it was Green Bay or the Niners. So it's just kind of weird. But we know we've seen this before. The Eagles kept before last year. They kept 7 defensive tackles, which blew other teams away.
Yeah.
Couldn't figure it out, and then we know they would move one of them, a street, to the Falcons. But right now, the Eagles have 6 on the roster.
Yeah, so 6 corners, 6 inside linebackers, 6 edge rushers, 18 players right there from 3 positions. That's a pretty big number, and definitely one of the more lopsided ratios that the Eagles have had in the past at those positions. So we'll see. We'll see how that works out. I always tend to think that things will change, not just from injuries, but as players become available and not available, and then you'll see some elevations from the practice squad. We talked about in the last pod. They're going to need a backup center. That's what Nick Gates is on the practice squad for. They'll need another tight end. That's what. See, Jack Stoll, I think you and I thought would be the guy.
On there. Yeah.
Yeah, Jack Stoll, we thought would be the guy that would probably get promoted to the 53 if a roster spot opened up. And so when James Bradbury went down, I thought that was going to be the guy, but it again turned out to be Oren Burks. And like you said, I agree. It probably suggests that the teams were sniffing around Oren Burks.
Yeah. Oh, and Jack Stoll will be the other. Yeah, we'll get into the practice squad move. That one we kind of saw coming. 2 teams offered him a deal, the Giants and the Eagles, in March, and he thought that he would have a better role with the Giants. Unfortunately, there were 2 transactions that he didn't know about. Theo Johnson they drafted, and they signed a blocking tight end.
Manhurts.
Yeah, thank you. Chris Manhurts is only in the NFL because he can block. He can't, from Canisius, by the way. It's more of a basketball school, and he's been in the league 10 years. Chris Manhurts, but he is a old school wide tight end, and unfortunately, that's what Jack is. And he ran out of real estate there for a roster spot. So he's back with the Eagles, as you talked about, on their practice squad. Good for him. He's back with his college teammate Cam Jurgens, and here we go.
Canisius in the MAC conference, right? The Metro Atlantic Athletic Conference. It's got Iona. If I'm still correct, that was like Iona, Canisius, Siena. Is there a college in Siena?
Saints.
I think so. Yeah, the Siena Saints. There's Fairfield, the Stags, alma mater of one Joe DeCamara.
That's right.
Let's see what else. I used to be able to. St. Peter's, Niagara.
Yep. Oh my God, is St. Peter's? Wow, St. Peter. Well, here's a question: does Canisius have a football team? I guess they do.
Well, I guess so. Was Manhurts the only player on it?
Well, it was weird because like the Rams, where the Rams used to practice at UC Irvine, the Anteaters, they have a basketball team, but they don't have a football team. They have a soccer team, practice on the soccer field. So you never know. Because I only knew Canisius growing up. They were kind of were they 1AA? I don't even know if they're 1A, but
no, I think they were always small Division 1, like all those other MAC schools.
Yeah, they always had an NBA player. That every 5 or 10 years becomes something. But anyway, so Stoll's back, and right now it's Goddard and Calcaterra are your only tight ends on the 53-man roster.
Amazing. All right, as far as other moves, the Eagles claimed, now we have to be very clear on this, and I don't blame anybody for being confused. The Eagles claimed off waivers a defensive tackle from the Raiders named Byron Young, Byron. He is not to be confused with the 2 Brian Youngs in the NFL who spell it Bryon. There is a pass rusher for the Rams named Brian Young, who was a pretty good rookie last year.
No, it's Byron Young. It's
I'm sorry. Yeah. Byron. No, wait. The pass rusher is Byron also?
Absolutely, from Tennessee. In fact, Cosell and I were talking about this on our he actually did a great job of you just line it up though correctly. Byron Young's the edge rusher from Tennessee.
Right.
And he's the older guy. He's 26 now. He was a guy that might have been working in a retail job or something. It's a pretty amazing story. Great, really cool story. And now the kid that you just mentioned that the Eagles got, man, what I find interesting about this Byron Young, the D tackle out of Alabama, same conference SEC though.
Right.
is that the Raiders cut the guy after 1 year.
Yeah, very
I
strange.
found out. I
That's
looked into
not
it,
obviously
but
not a
yeah.
great thing for him, but
No, well, there's a reason. So,
mhm,
uh, attitude, entitlement,
mhm,
kind of felt like he had arrived, or the word around the club was a consistent effort. He kind of came in a way like this is kind of a different story, but Trey Sermon, when he came in with the Niners, he thought he was going to be starting running back. It didn't kind of earn it. This is going
mhm,
back 3 years ago. And Kyle Shanahan let him know it. And Trey Sermon was not long for the Niners roster. This Byron Young, he's more of a three technique. He's built like he's probably a little less than 300 pounds. I saw him about a month ago in Raiders camp. But man, there's talent here. He played at Alabama. The Eagles know this school. They've done well with this school. Once they actually started to draft guys from that school, uh, is after ignoring it for 2 decades. But look, the guy's got a new home here. The Eagles are very young at D tackle. He'll have an opportunity to stick here. Uh, but what I find interesting is it's the same defensive coordinator was still there with the Raiders. Yes, they have a new front office and coaching staff, but it's the same D coordinator, and they didn't want him in Patrick Graham. So with
mm.
the Raiders, that's not good. And Antonio Pierce, with the discipline he wants energy and passion for the job, and this guy just didn't bring it. But the guy's talented, and he's going to have a chance here to stick.
Yeah, I wonder if he's a bigger guy, right? Byron
No,
Young.
he's smaller.
Oh, he's small. Okay, so
He's
then they
long,
really
but he's small. He's
that's
like,
yeah, long limb but
yeah,
small. They don't really have a backup like Marlon Tuipulotu, who became, the guy that they parted ways with, and now he's with the Kansas City Chiefs practice squad. He was sort of your backup nose.
yep,
If Jordan Davis gets hurt now, Moro Jomo certainly isn't a nose. Booker was impressive. I know he played a little bit there, but I don't think he's a long-term, like I can play 30 snaps there, head up over the center. So I think what Vic would wind up doing, Vic Fangio would just play a more of a four down line front and then bring that off ball linebacker on line of scrimmage. So you're still getting five, but you'd have different alignments. I don't think you would have a true
agree.
guy lining up over the center.
You'd have to shade it a certain way to help your guys out. But
Like the
yeah,
Gannon
Book,
defense, first year of Gannon, when they didn't have Jordan Davis. Well, they did, but he didn't play a lot, right? They played basically four down linemen, and Jannard Avery
that's
was the
right.
guy who would come
That's
down. They
right.
didn't really
Gennard
play with
Avery.
a true
Yeah.
nose.
Yeah, that is right. So they've got a lot. I mean, they're all young. I mean, that's the thing. No one on their defensive line. We're talking about the D tackles, right? There's six of them.
Mhm.
No one has been with the team past the 22 season. Davis. Well, no, well, okay. Williams is really not an end. I know people think of him as an end. He's not. He's a tackle. He's got the longest tenure. He's
Yeah.
four. This is his fourth year. Davis is third year. Carter second. Ojomo second. Booker third, and Byron Young is in his third. And we'll see how long you would think they would give him a hard look here. Guy was a third round pick, but as you said, man, cutting him after 1 year is, ooh, that's a little concerning. But hey,
Mhm.
he's on the Eagles roster for a bit. By rule, I think you have to keep him for 3 weeks. I think that's the rule.
There you go. All right. So Josh Jobe did not come back to the Eagles practice squad. He signed with Seattle's practice squad. Maybe
Yeah,
he just needed a change of scenery. I think by the end, Jobe had become a guy who wasn't as physical as he was as when he got to the Eagles and kind of stood out for being a physical corner. And then when he did try to be physical, he would get too handsy and you would see him getting flagged for DPI or holding or something. I don't know, maybe the new scenery, different place, he can put it together. I think
yeah.
he's never going to be an A level starter, but we saw potential in him earlier in his career. I thought he was going to make it.
Job is a fifth corner. I mean, he's got decent length. He's a really good special teams player, but it's not a great athlete. Transitioning is an issue for him. And yeah, what was it? Fangio who called him out? What we talked about? He's he said something about, I think it was him, about his
Mm-hmm.
hands,
Mm-hmm.
about the penalties or whatever it was, or use hands correctly.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, he'll have a chance because um, they run a 34 front. They run an odd man front. They play some similar things with their zones. They'll play some man with the Seahawks because of Mike McDonald's background. But they've moved on. You mentioned Marlon Tuipulotu, who after he cleared a waiver signed to the Chiefs practice squad. So uh, he didn't. It's a shame. 2 years ago, before he got hurt during the 22 Super Bowl run, it looked like he was going to be good backup for the Eagles, but he was never really the same. And as you said earlier, and I agree, he's way more of a nose and a 5 or 3 technique. He's just really not. He's as Fangio said, you got to do more than one thing. I just never got the feeling he could do more than one thing for the Eagles, and that's why they got let him go.
All right. As far as other additions, the practice squad was filled out. Brett Toth came back to the practice squad, offensive line, which we figured he would do if he could not find a job elsewhere. Griffin Bear, the wide receiver, back to the practice squad. Kevin Folch, that little that
Yeah.
mid-camp pickup, wound up getting himself. I thought he had a little juice to him. I was impressed with what we saw in the preseason games from Kevin Folch. So he's back on the tight end. Where was he? New Haven, University of New Haven
Yeah,
guy.
I know. It's just so strange. Yeah.
Man, how do you have a guy? You have a
Never,
guy from Canisius and a guy from University of New Haven.
I
Go
mean,
figure.
and then you mentioned Fairfield. Fairfield's right off of 95, man. Where
Yep,
Frank Pepe's in Fairfield. That's funny.
that's right.
And
One of
but the
my
big
old
one,
stomping grounds, by the way.
yeah, oh yeah,
My
that's
high
right. You lived
school
in that
was
area.
attached to Fairfield University. It was
Oh
called
wow.
Fairfield
Okay.
Prep.
Okay. But the big move, I'm fascinated by this one, just because he was healthy, is that Eagles signed JT Woods, another former 3rd-round pick. This one out of Baylor in 2022 with the Chargers. They changed their scheme, coaching staff. He's a tall safety over 6'1". He missed most of last season due to an undisclosed medical condition. He was on reserve NFI. He would return late, but he was just not a factor because he missed too much time. It's another case of drafted by a different GM for a different scheme. It all changed. Boy, he became a full-time starter at Baylor's final 2 years. He had 9 INTs over his final 2 seasons, 6 as a senior. Healthy, never had any issues. He played in all games, all 50 at Baylor. So he was a track guy in high school, played both sides of the football, mostly defense, played a little bit of running back and receiver, 100-meter and 200-meter guy in track. Height, weight, speed guy. He's got some ability here. This is a kind of guy. This is perfect for a practice squad. Because think of it, after the season, Eagles could easily get out of Gardner Johnson's contract if he doesn't perform or is not healthy. Blankenship, we know, will be one of their top 3 safeties. Maddox is on a 1-year deal. McCollum's contract, he'll be a exclusive rights free agent. So they don't have a lot of answers past the season. Why not take a look at this guy? I like this signing a lot.
Yeah, and now you have him and Caden Stearns to potentially be
Yep.
so once Caden's fully healthy, if he can still play, then you've got some good depth pieces and like you said, guys to have around for the future there. So definitely smart. It's sort of how they approached with Thomas Booker when they brought him in after he was waived by the Texans.
Yeah,
Was it
last year. Yeah.
yeah, and he wasn't he a fair what was he, a 5th-round pick or I forget what he was.
6.
6. Okay, yeah. And it wound up that
It's a great
Booker makes
move.
the team
I'm
this
saying, no,
year.
you're
Yeah.
right. 5th. No, you're right. You're 5th.
Yeah,
5th.
it was a 5th-round pick.
Good call.
Wow.
So yeah, but Booker is a great story of development. He clearly earned the spot in training camp to be on the roster. He spent the entire he got cut last August. He spent all the season on their practice squad. This is a great story. You got to give obviously their coaches credit defensively. I mean, I know that Tracy Rocker is gone now. He's with the Titans, but just and then Clint Hurtt, obviously, who's now the D-line coach. This is a good story. And by the way, this is a guy who was on the street,
Mhm.
right?
Yeah.
This guy was on the street. He actually cleared waivers. He was not claimed. This is a really good story. And now again, I say that he did all his work against 2s. Let's see what happens. Let's see what happens if he's got to play this season and see how he fares. But just
Of
as of
course.
now, it's been a great story.
Yeah, 100% agree. All right, Adam. Well, it is the fall. I mean, there are so many great sporting activities that we associate with the fall. We've got college football underway. Big win by Penn State over the weekend. I was very satisfied. There's NFL games about to start. And of course, baseball is going to enter the postseason not too long. Phillies are going to be looking for that World Series title. Everybody's going to want to see these things live because it's fun to go to live sporting events. And there's also a great calendar of concerts coming to the Philadelphia area, Atlantic City, and you can get tickets for all of these events on the Game Time app. It is our favorite ticketing app. They have a great feature It's called Game Time Picks. We have talked about this. It allows you to see your favorite teams play live even easier because it filters out all the fluff. It only shows you the best deals on the great seats, so you don't have to waste time going through every single row, every single seat, trying to figure out where the best value is. Game Time does that for you. It's their super deal, and it is one of the best deals that you can find on a ticketing app. It's easy to use. That's why we like Game Time. You can see the view from your seat. You can basically have your tickets within 3 taps on your phone. There's not a lot of hoops to jump through. They've got the most flexible customer service policy in the ticketing industry. And of course, they've got their lowest price guarantee where you get 110% credit of the difference if you find a better price somewhere else. The all-in pricing shows you the price up front. It's just such a convenient app, a great app to use whenever you want to go see sporting events, concerts, theater shows, and of course, MLB playoffs. If you want to go see the Phillies play, and you use the Game Time app. All right, so take the guesswork out of buying all tickets, concert tickets, sporting event tickets, any kind of tickets using Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code BIRDS for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code BIRDS, BIRDS, for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. All right, Adam, before we talk about the injuries in the situation and get into the Packers game a little bit, I do want to take a minute to thank 2 former Eagles who were just amazing for us and our Patreon members. That was Todd Harrimans, who came on as part of our monthly Chalk Talk podcast for all of our Patreon members. And he did an amazing job discussing Mekhi Becton and his transition from tackle to guard, because Todd had to make that transition over and over again throughout his career, about having to put on weight, lose weight, techniques, right side, left side. He also shared some really funny stories from his playing days and some of his teammates. So Todd Harrimans, thanks so much. It was a great treat for our Patreon members to have him on there. And then Mike Quick. This was all. We had our first Ask an Eagle. We do a monthly show now called Ask an Eagle for our tier 2 and 3 Patreon members, where they come into a Zoom chat room with us. We bring on a former Eagle coach, player, or executive, and we let our Patreon members ask questions. Mike Quick was generous with his time. He said he'd love to do it. And Adam, you could tell that he was taken aback by how good the questions were from our Patreon members. So great job by them. And as you can see it on our socials, I put out some of his breakdowns. It led to him really giving excellent breakdowns on the differences between playing slot versus Y and Z, and his career and how he was asked to do certain things and what he's expecting from Kellen Moore's offense. It was so educational.
The intel that he had, because he goes to every practice, the Tanner McKee stuff, I was like, wow. I talked to Mike about it when I was at practice and I saw him, but what he saw, he's just taking it from his own eyes, and he gave us some incredible intel from practice and the players and the challenges and all that they're going through of, just year to year. And so it was just really amazing, man. It really was. Really appreciate Mike and Todd's breakdown of the challenge of, wow, of being 6'6" and moving inside. And we want him to come on and talk about the challenge of Becton and what that's going to be like. So yeah, it was some really educational. We really thank these guys. It was great.
Yeah, Todd was really honest about it. He talked about the habit you can have of oversetting when you move from one position to another and what that will do. So he broke that down really well. But also he noticed some things about Mekhi Becton's hands usage that he talked to us about, and that was really good. So listen, it's a treat. Patreon.com/InsideTheBirds. You will be, if you haven't signed up yet, so glad that you did. It is absolutely worth it. And we just keep adding to the platform. And of course, we'll do our live stream on Wednesday night at 8 o'clock this week.
Yeah, and Andrew DeCecco joins us from time to time. It's great when 3 of us are in there. It's pretty cool. It's it's great because that one on Wednesday night will be 2 days before the game. That'll be super cool. And we're also, of course, on Discord. We pop in there, drop some knowledge and information, and get involved in the conversations. I plan on being on the Discord during the game. We started doing this late last season. It's fun because The tough one was we were in there for the Buccaneer game. That was a little tough because the game was not competitive. But this year, and particularly this game, because there's so much intrigue. Green Bay
Hmm.
had that shocking win. We're getting into Green Bay in a minute. But Green Bay's shocking blowout win at Dallas, and they're returning a lot of stars. Their roster's really good. Their quarterback is really good. So this is a fun matchup, no question, on Friday night.
All right, so let's talk about this matchup. First thing is the injuries that we're going to go through. The picture got a lot better on Sunday. I was getting a little concerned going into the weekend about Dallas Goedert with the oblique injury that has kept him out, because obliques, you're not in your abdomen and you get worried about sports hernias or core muscle issues. But he, along with several others who had been injured or not practicing, like Isaiah Rodgers and J.X. Hunt, were at practice. They had helmets on, getting some work in. Johnny Wilson also, man, he's been out for a bit with a
That's
concussion
good.
too. So that was good to see. That those two guys, especially Wilson and Goddard, given the lightness that they have on offense right now, were able to get out there and do some work. So we'll see how that progresses throughout the week.
It's interesting. The oblique injury, if you're a pitcher, you're out 2 months. It's crazy because of what they have to do to their midsection. You know how they have to contort and all that. But it's a common football injury, actually. It's a little bit more common than you think. Sometimes they don't call it an oblique, though, which is funny. Like they might call it chest when
Hmm.
it's really above your waist. I've had it before. It's not great. It takes a while, but you can play with it as a football player, but you got to be careful. And that's why they backed off a little bit. So he was working. The big one, as you said, is Johnny Wilson with a concussion. So assuming that he dresses, see, right now you've got five on the 53. Brown, Smith, Dotson's
Hmm.
your three, covers your backup slot, and Wilson. Wilson missed a lot of time here late in August. The question will be, will they add Paris Campbell? We'll talk more about this in the next show, but they've got Rosemary Jack Saint, who's a rookie. Then of course you got Paris Campbell, who would make the most sense because he's been with them the entire summer. So we'll see what happens.
How many times do you think we're going to accidentally call Jack Saint Rosemary?
Yeah, I know. Different. Yeah. It's like who there was another player. There was another player. Well, the one I love is people put on social media and I always laugh. The most butchered Philadelphia sports player names.
Uh-huh.
Alshon Jeffries,
Oh,
Jeffries.
yeah. I
You
remember
could go
working at the radio station, and someone called me up about wanted to talk about Alshon Jefferson. I
Jeff,
said, come on now.
well, I got it wrong, and Chase Daniels saw me in the locker room and goes, "Dude, why do you call?" He goes, "You know my last name because I said Chase Daniels with an S." I'm like,
Uh-huh.
"Sorry, man, it just came out. What do you want me to do? I'm from Philly. We
Yeah, I was
butchered
gonna
your
say that's like one of the more at least acceptable butcherings of a name. It's hard to remember between the Daniel and the Daniels, you know?
who is well Hersey Hawkins. People call him Hershey Hawkins,
Percy
which I get.
Hawkins.
Yeah, Jim Lynam, Jimmy Lyman.
Yeah, oh gosh, yeah. Yeah.
Go through the names, but anyway, we digress.
But anyway, so that's the injury situation early. Now I want you to repeat this to make sure that everybody understands this. The
Okay.
first injury report will not be out until
Tuesday afternoon, 4 p.m.
Tuesday.
answer. Yeah,
Okay.
it's the Eagles usually release it between 4 and 4:05. Believe me, I look at the stuff. I'm because based on what we're doing here for the show, the sooner I know, the better who's going to be listed or not listed. I always find it interesting out of a game because when the guy's not listed the next week, then he came out well. If he's still listed with it, it's kind of lingering, and I'll be interested to see on Tuesday. And they have to release it Tuesday and Wednesday. Even if they don't practice, they have to do it. Then Thursday's only a walkthrough. They have to list the walkthrough information, which is great. Because I could just tell you from going back 25 years with these injury reports, more often than not, players who do not participate in the walkthrough don't play. It's not an
Mhm.
absolute. Some guys will, but more often than not, they don't play. So that's something we'll be looking at Thursday, and we'll talk about it on our pregame show. But yeah, that's it for the Eagles injuries. Now, again, there could be a pop-up that we don't know about, the dreaded pop-up injury. We'll see what happens on Tuesday.
Right. Now, from a Packers standpoint, if you were smart enough to see what was going on in Packers camp and you're a fantasy football player and you moved Josh Jacobs up in your rankings, you were smart, because AJ Dillon, the backup, he's out for the year. He has
He's
a
done.
season-ending
Yep.
neck injury, and even his backup is Marshawn Lloyd a rookie?
Yes,
Yeah,
he was the third round of USC, who's really
right.
great versatility. He's
But
been
he's
out all
banged
this
up
month.
too. Yeah.
Yeah, he just got back. He just started work and come back from a hamstring injury. And the only other guy they have on their 53 is Emmanuel Wilson, who was an undrafted free agent last year out of the another popular school, Fort Valley State. So
Oh my God.
I know
Wait,
now
say
they
that again.
Fort Valley
Ford?
State,
Fort Valley
Fort,
State? Okay,
yeah,
Fort Valley State.
Fort Valley State. There's definitely been an NFL player from that school before. I just can't remember who it was.
Now that's one conference I can't name nor
I
the
have no
teams. Is that
idea.
like Sun
Yeah.
Belt or something? I don't know.
I couldn't even guess. I don't even know where it is, but
I was gonna say I don't know where it is
they
either.
do have LaMichael P. Ryan, a former Jets draftee out of 2020, was the fourth rounder, who was actually once on the Eagles practice squad for a smidge. Most people don't remember this, but he was in 22. He is on their practice squad, so I could see them calling him up. But yeah, Lloyd, he's got great versatility. I mean, the guy
Hmm.
can catch. He was one of the most versatile backs for this draft. But yeah, it's all about Josh Jacobs.
Yep. He should be the bell cow. They paid him to be that, and he will be
Yep.
that for the Packers. All right, so that's the injury situation there. Let's talk a little bit about the Eagles offense because we're going to really get into, as you mentioned, in the next podcast and the pregame show, we'll really get into an X's and O's discussion. But as you mentioned with Johnny Wilson and Britton Covey, sort of backup slot, we really have to wait and see what Kellen Moore is going to do with this receiver group as far as his inside number 3 receiver. That's something we talked about also with Mike Quick. Jahan Dotson was not a slot receiver much in Washington. He did play it, but if you look at the percentages, he was far more of an outside receiver. So, and we talked about this too. How much of the offense does he know? He just got here
Yeah.
a week ago, if that, or maybe 2. But he hasn't practiced very much, and this is not an offense that's simple, right? There, we expect motion, we expect shifting, we expect diverse formations. So it'll be very interesting to see what Kellen Moore does. He historically likes to play his better receivers like CeeDee Lamb and Keenan Allen in the slot. Don't know if he wants to do that with AJ Brown or with Devontae Smith, but maybe he does. I think that's one of the bigger
Well,
questions going into the year.
one of the things I like what he did with Keenan Allen, he moved him. He did not play exclusively in the slot last year. The fact Keenan Allen talked about that, how he got pigeonholed, that he loved the way that Kellen Moore moved him around. So the hope here, because Dotson's knock on him is that he's very finesse, doesn't fight through contact. So maybe Kellen Moore's got to free him up. Maybe he's got to do that. And by the way, Devontae Smith's his numbers inside are really good when he plays inside, like
Yes.
exceptional. So that on your point, that's a great point, man, because we don't have that answer. He's new to Kellen Moore's new to Jahan Dotson. He just got here. Britton Covey, he had a great training camp, great story, earned his way. Not only he was going to be their punt returner anyway, mostly their punt returner. He may give up a little bit to DeJean, but Covey was really good in the slot this summer. So it's great. They've got now guys who can play it for sure. Where people were wondering, like in the offseason, remember when we saw Johnny Wilson was sort of like getting a lot of work inside? We're like, you can't be serious with this. Like you
Right.
can't be. Yeah.
Right. Yeah, and now on the flip side, you have the Packers here who have a bunch of young receivers, but they all have roles. I mean, they're all basically the guys who are back from last year who, along with Jordan Love, really made the Packers offense pretty darn good in the second half of the year. And they have the thing that stands out to me, Adam, and you wrote about this too, is that it's a very diverse set of wide receivers. You have a guy like Jaden Reed out of Michigan State now who can move around and play your Z, your move Z. He can do orbit motion. You
He
got a guy
plays
like Chris.
inside though. He plays
He
most
does
inside.
play inside, but when they go 2 receivers though, isn't he one of the outside? He goes inside in 11, I
Dobbs
think.
does. Dobbs plays.
I think
Remember
it's
we have
Dobbs.
Dobbs
Oh
there?
no, you're right, Watson. But
Yeah.
When Watson has been hurt, they've used Reed on the outside, then moved him inside to bring in like a Dontavion Wicks
Yes,
a lot too.
and when they play 11 when Watson was out. And Watson, this is interesting. So they did a study on his hamstring what the issue is, and they think they've got it corrected. He is their designated 9 route runner. So when you talk about the diverse of it's three, you talk about 3 levels: Watson 9 route, Dobbs intermediate,
Mhm.
Reed intermediate, Wicks sort of intermediate. He plays bigger than his list aside. But Bo Melton, you might remember out of Rutgers, who kind of saved the day when Watson was out and a couple of the other receivers and Luke Musgrave was out. He played a lot. He had a couple really big games for them down the stretch last year. And Wicks, number 13, who you mentioned, was a 5th rounder last year. Really great coming off the bench. He was a great story from UVA. Like they're super deep, the youngest receiver core in the NFL. In fact, if you put their tight ends and receivers together, they're the only team without a vested veteran. It's kind of interesting, and you know what, you can do it. I mean, they and the cool thing is they're all going to grow with Jordan Love. They're all going to be here for a while. They could spread you out. The Eagles secondary is going to be tested. I know Matt LaFleur is a big balance 11 versus 12 personnel. He doesn't like to play heavy 11 like Sean McVay does, but at some point you got to take advantage of having all these guys out there. This group is really deep and really talented, and they're going to be hard. And the Eagles' depth of talent is going to be tested. We know the Eagles are way deeper than last year, but they've got new players who are going to. Rodgers is new to the team. Quinyon Mitchell's new to the team. Ringo's role is going to be bigger this year, and DeJean's new to the team. So we'll see what happens.
How about this? This is a matchup of the only team in the NFL without a vested veteran on the defensive interior front versus the only team in the NFL without a vested veteran among the wide receiver tight
That's
end group.
incredible. Wow, I
Is
didn't
that?
even think of that. Yeah, that's insane. But you know what? Look, I definitely have some concerns with the backup group. We've talked about this now for 3 or 4 months. It's great that you're doing good against the twos, but when you come in, you're not going against twos. You're going against real starters in a real
Right.
game, and that's the thing. But these guys got to play. We'll see what happens. But this is I cannot wait to break this matchup down with Cosell later this week, and I'll get into it. But yeah, this is like the early word. And the big thing for the Packers is they have a new defensive coordinator, new scheme, completely different scheme. We'll talk about that briefly in a minute. But the thing is, though, the Eagles have a big advantage with with Brown, Smith, and Goddard. That Packer secondary can be had if you could protect. You never which Jai Alexander is going to show up, the All Pro or the guy that basically was immature. There were questions whether he'd be back. Then he had a great playoff game. Remember the craziness of coming out to be a team captain against the Panthers when he shouldn't have done that?
That was just really weird. Yeah.
Yeah. So, and Eric Stokes has missed a lot of time, a former first round pick. This is a group where I think you can get these guys, and I'm so interested to see what happens here. Eric Stokes has missed a lot of time here. So they're not real deep at corner, and the Eagles, and Kellen Moore wants to spread you out anyway. I love this matchup, man. And as we've talked about also, we have no idea about home field. We have no idea what it's going to be like.
Right.
There's a lot of intrigue in this game.
Yeah, and one last thing on the Packers offense, the offensive line. I mean, they have a couple of, Elkton Jenkins is a very good player. He tends to be hurt, but right now I think he's all right. They did draft the kid out of Jordan Morgan, right? Out of Arizona kid.
Yep. He's
Yeah,
going to play.
yeah.
He's going to play guard.
He was a good player coming out of college. We'll see. He's a rookie. He's got to prove it. But they don't have Bakhtiari anymore, and he obviously usually hurt anyway.
Yeah.
So this is an offensive line with some question marks. I think it's been bailed out in the past, or I don't want to say bailed out, but when you have a guy like Jordan Love who played at the level that he played at last year, and he can run, he can move around the pocket, he can get rid of the ball quickly, eases up things on the offensive line a little bit. But this should be an area where the Eagles go in saying, if our edge rushers are going to be good, we can get or interior rushers are good too. We can get these guys.
Yeah, and we're going to learn, and it'll be hot. Right now, the forecast is to be in the 90s in Brazil. We'll see. We'll see if it changes. But the Jordan Davis conditioning thing is going to come up, and that's certainly it's not gone away. I learned my lesson last year when I felt like he had a really good training camp. Maybe this will be the year, and he got off to a great start, and then it wasn't injury related. Like it was high ankle sprain 2 years ago. He can't use that excuse. He's just got to keep it up. They don't have anyone who's got any experience behind them. The Carter. What I found fascinating was it just Clint Hurd mentioned it? Was it both Fangio and Clint Hurd talked about Jalen Carter's conditioning?
Oh, Fangio. Yeah.
Fangio was Fangio. Okay. It was, I was like, why are you mentioning him? Was this an issue? We didn't know that.
Yeah. Yeah, I think he was setting the tone. That was his first press conference. So of camp. Okay. So he was setting the tone from the start. This isn't a country club anymore.
Yeah.
We're gonna practice for 90 minutes. We're gonna play a lot of snaps.
Oh yeah. And Vic got his wish. They practiced harder, but the Packer offensive line, again, not very talented, but they play well together. They give Jordan Love enough time, and the O-line coach, who's only in it for a couple of years in terms of running, is Luke Buckus, nephew of the late Dick Buckus. He's done a really good job. A little better than I expected them to be, and we'll see. As you said, the Eagles are the Jordan. I mean, if Jordan Davis holds up against the run, which is what they need to do with Josh Jacobs, and Carter busts through like he did last year for a majority of the season when he was just an absolute animal, just incredible. this thing's going to be fascinating. This
Mm.
we'll give our picks later in the week. This is I'm kind of vacillating. I'm early lean would be the Packers, but I may change my mind. I need to learn a little bit more about the Packers secondary. And then, you got the issues with the Eagles at inside backer. Like both teams have their issues. Eagles, everybody knows who's listening who are Eagle fans know exactly what their issues are. The Packers, can their offensive line hold up against this Eagles front? Because this revamped secondary, they got two new starting safeties. What's this going to look like? They've got Edgerrin Cooper was my guy out of Texas A&M. And with Quay Walker, they're a pretty talented inside backer. Well, they're running a 4-3, so they'll have one inside backer and they'll have a weak side and a strong side. But they've got some changes. And could Preston Smith regain something? Could Rashawn Gary is really good bring it? There are a lot of there are questions here. And who's still on the Packers and not so former Eagles great, Eric Wilson.
Oh, Eric Wilson, he's there. I didn't
Yeah,
realize that. That's funny.
yeah.
Oh yeah, he's there.
Last couple of
Okay.
years.
Yeah, no, definitely not. And don't forget they have Lucas Van Ness, who's going to be entering year
Yeah.
2. So they have some interesting guys
Yep.
in their front. All right, a little bit more on the matchup before we get out of here. But first, we're going to pause real quick to hear a word from our friends at Sky Motor Cars.
Sky Motor Cars in Westchester is a different sort of dealership. All it takes is one look at their Highline pre-owned vehicles that people all over the country want and need. Owner Brett Schiller, make sure you don't spend a dime of your money before you purchase the car. Sky Motor Cars allows you to make all the decisions regarding your next vehicle. At Sky Motor Cars, you never have to spend more than necessary. Visit SkyMotorCars.com today or call 610-918-7225.
And if you stop in the Sky Motor Cars out there in Westchester, PA, make sure you tell them Adam just sent you. You'll get a great deal. If you can't make it, just go to SkyMotorCars.com. Adam, you alluded to our pregame show. We are doing a pregame show again. It's a little bit of a different format this year, but it'll be myself, you, Greg Cosell, and we're going to record it and have it up as early as possible on game days this year, probably by 6 a.m. to give people a maximum amount of time to listen to it. I mentioned that we've got a season full of good content. Of course, Inside the Birds will this week we start going back to our 3 times a week schedule: Monday, Wednesday, Friday. In normal weeks, Friday will be like the game. This week, it's going to be the pregame show because the Eagles are playing on Friday. But those will coming back. Q&A. Definitely working on bringing them back. We're getting to the finish line, just working everything out. Almost positive that they will be back. Derek Gunn is doing Gun on One again this year, once a week for us during the NFL season. Looking forward to having that show back. His interviews are always great. He gets people to open up and say things that they don't normally say.
Mm-hmm.
He reminds me of the old Roy Firestone interviews on ESPN because everybody feels comfortable with Gunner and talking to him. So that'll be a really interesting series again this year. Andrew DeCecco is going to do some stuff for us on his own. We're going to have him do what we call Inside the Locker Room pod, where he's going to sometime later in the week give you his impressions from things he learned during his time in the Eagles locker room, talking to players and coaches each week. So that's going to be an addition. And we have some other content too. We'll announce it all. Greg Cosell, I'm sorry, I forgot. I don't want to bury the lead here. The show from last year called Inside the Tape that featured Greg Cosell breaking down tape and previewing the next opponent with Clay Harbor is going to be me and Adam with Greg Cosell this year. So that will also be a weekly show on the main platform, Inside the Tape with Greg Cosell, which has been a favorite of the fans. So that'll be back as well. And like I said, we'll have everything on our social medias. We'll put it up on the website when it's all ready to be announced, the schedule of when the shows will come out.
For Patreon, obviously, they get it first, correct?
Patreon members get this first. Yes, everything gets immediately posted ad-free when it's right after it's recorded.
Beautiful.
Yep. All right. So last thing on the Packers, our last few things is I'm fascinated by their new defensive coordinator, Geoff Hafley. Comes over from Boston College, where he was the head coach. In college, and you never know what someone's going to do when they get to the NFL. They can change some things based on their personnel, but he was a very aggressive defensive play caller, liked to blitz, liked to play a lot of cover one, bring that safety down. So that we've seen in the past, that's been a little bit of a dangerous approach. I remember a couple of years ago when the Lions tried that in the season opener against the Eagles. They tried to blitz Aaron Glenn, one safety deep, and AJ Brown and Devontae Smith just ate that defense up that day. And that was the start of a pretty impressive season. So we'll see what Geoff Hafley does, but he does have some pretty good personnel there on defense, especially in the front 6 to be able to rush the passer.
Yeah, the front seven is going to completely change because they're running a 43 now. They ran a 34 for well over a decade. And the knock on Joe Barry, the former defense coordinator, was too finesse, underachieved. They should be better. It's the word around the league. And maybe this is on your point about Halfley. Maybe he'll be more aggressive. We mentioned the 2 safeties, Javon Bullard, second rounder this year out of Georgia, and Xavier McKinney, who the Eagles were in on. McKinney signed here with the Packers, so they're going to have 2 new safeties. We mentioned Eric Stokes and his injury history. He's talented, former first-round pick, but it's a trouble staying on the field. And Jair Alexander, he's immensely talented. You just don't know what you're getting out of him. But man, he had a huge game against the Cowboys in the playoffs. So this is a very interesting, a lot of intrigue because things have changed for the Packers, mostly on defense, not much on offense other than Josh Jacobs. Then all the changes, the coordinator changes for the Eagles and the personnel changes. You got Barkley here now. You got Jahan Dotson. You got Quinyon Mitchell. Can't wait to see him. And Cooper DeJean, how he's going to be used because he came back late. So they got to kind of figure that out. Zach Ball now is an inside backer, position he never played before. Bryce Huff now in his $17 million a year playing as a stand-up edge rusher, which he's not done before. There's a lot of what you have a lot when you have newness with both teams. There's a lot of intrigue because it's the first game. You don't have any tape from. It's not like they're playing week 5 where you could put some stuff in the book. You don't have that.
Right. All right. Well, that's fine. Anything else about the Packers jumped out at you? Listen, I think that the really interesting thing is both the Eagles and Packers almost had the same offseason approach. Sign a big-time running back in free agency, sign a big-time free agency. A big-time safety in free agency. For the Eagles, it was C.J. Gardner-Johnson. For the Packers, it was Xavier McKinney. For the Eagles, it was Saquon. For the Packers, it was Josh Jacobs. So very similar approach there. 2 really good teams, 2 good quarterbacks who can get around and make throws and run out of the pocket. I like this matchup. This was a good matchup.
The cool thing is, like, if you look at if this Packers team was going against the Eagles cornerback group last year, I'd be very worried.
Oh man.
The Eagles have depth. I mean, Ringo's shown to be a quality backup. Okay, that's what he's going to be. That's what he's drafted to be. Like, he had made a big jump. So you got that. If they're going to go 11 personnel or even 10, you put Ringo in the field. You feel good that he could handle it. Darius Slay's healthy. Okay, Rodgers, great story. Quinyon Mitchell is going to. However, look, Mitchell may play inside in nickel, but he's going to be starting outside corner opposite Slay. Okay, this is great. They've got enough safeties now. If nobody gets hurt, they're okay. Maddox now is a safety. He's played this position before. So they could hang now. They could hang against any passing team where you felt like, oh man, they're in trouble.
Yep.
Not anymore. And they've got the guy. They've got Vic Fangio now. The special teams units. We'll probably talk a little bit about Green Bay's when we preview the game. But Eagles have, we think, good coverage units. We know that the kickoffs have changed. But the return game, punt return is terrific. We'll see about kickoffs. Although, boy, Rodgers is a pretty good kickoff returner. Kellen Moore is an outstanding coordinator. So this to me is a extremely even matchup. The line that opened at 4.5 back in May is now down to 1 or 1.5, depending on what book. And the Eagles, by the way, favored. But we'll see what happens closer to game day if it's even a pick 'em.
There you go. All right, we will get into this more on Wednesday when we start to really look into the storylines for the Eagles headed into this season. That's going to do it for this episode of Inside the Birds, the leading podcast in Eagles intel. And as always, we thank you for flying with us inside the Birds. Be sure to check out our friends at PHLSportsNation.com. They're enhancing the fans' experience with their coverage of all Philadelphia sports teams. For the fan, by the fan is their motto. So make sure you check them out at PHLSportsNation.com and on Twitter at PHLSportsNation.